and we're going to the workbook. So I think there are 18 or 19 questions in section R.4, part 2. We're just going to do these. I foresee an hour and a half or less. I'm definitely counting on getting out of here before 8 o'clock. That's what I see, but I'll hang around if there's any questions. I didn't want another 2-hour lecture. Those videotapes are, you know, I mean, the video that I do, that's a 2-hour lecture we had yesterday. That's hard to sit through and watch again. All right, so we're going to continue with factoring. Yesterday we factored the GCF. I'm going to write this down here. Yesterday we did the GCF. What else did we do? We factored 4 terms. We factored 3 terms when the number in front of x squared equals 1. In other words, there's an invisible 1 right here. So today we're going to factor 3 terms. But look over here at number 1. When the number in front of the x squared is something other than 1. Factor 3 terms when the number in front of x squared does not equal 1. That means does not equal 1. And we're going to factor 2 terms today. So we have, I think, 9 or 10 problems of this, and then 9 or 10 problems of this today. I think there's 18 problems total, 18 or 19 problems. All right, let's get this show going. Factoring 3 terms with something here other than 1. So with the number other than 1 here. Steps. Step number 1, multiply A times C. By the way, A times C, by the way, this is called the AC method. AC method. If we write this down, AX squared plus BX plus C, do you see the number in front of x squared is A and the number without the x is C? So step 1, multiply AC, find all pairs that multiply. Multiply. Here's A and here's C. So we get 2 times 3 equals 6. So we're going to find all pairs that multiply 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Very similar to what we did yesterday. We did the last term. This time we're multiplying A and C together. These two, we're multiplying those 2 together. And we got 6. Add or subtract a pair to equal middle term. Same as last time. How do I get 7? A plus 1 and a plus 6. So that one don't work. Step 3, split the middle. Middle is LE. Split the middle with the pair. In other words, I'm going to just erase this. I'm going to split the middle. In other words, I'm going to use these two, 1x plus 6x. Do you see 7x is 1x plus 6x? I'm using 1x plus 6x because I did plus 1 and plus 6, okay? So I'm using 1x and 6x because that is my pair. We split the middle. I'm going to bring everything else down.
But you mean t, right?
Yes, I'm using x's. I'm changing it to x's because my t's don't look good. I'm changing it to x's. So, do you see step 1, multiply AC, step 2, multiply AC and then find all pairs. Step 2, add or subtract the pairs to equal the middle term. Step 3, split the middle with those pairs. And then step 4 is something we already know. Factor using the 4-term method. So we change it from 3 terms to 4 terms, and we're going to factor using the 4-term method. Here is 4 terms. Step 1 for 4-term method. I'm not going to write it down again. We wrote it down yesterday. Factoring the 4-term method. Put a parentheses around the first 2. Put a parentheses around the second 2 term. Make sure there's a plus sign between it. And that's pretty much why I wanted you to do the homework from yesterday. It's building on what we did yesterday. I mean, if you know how to do the 4-term method, then once you get to this spot, we're okay. Once we do that, remember step 2 for factoring the 4-term method is the GCF of each group. Factor out the GCF. 1 and 2, it just factors out a 1 and an x. The lowest power x is x. If I divide both of these by 1x, 2 divided by 1 is 2, x squared divided by x is x. These cancel. 1x divided by 1x. It doesn't turn to 0, it turns to 1. X divided by x is 1. Here, the GCF, can somebody tell me what I can factor out of here? The second parentheses? Anybody?
3.
Yeah, 3 factors out. So I divide each by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2x. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And the parentheses are identical. So we can continue. The next step for factoring 4 terms was factor out the parentheses. You can put a parentheses here and then factor out the parentheses. 2x plus 1 factors out. What's left inside the parentheses is 1x and a plus 3. Now, there's only one more thing I'm going to do. This is the answer, but I'm going to just rewrite it. I don't like the 1 in front. I left it there, but, I mean, you're not supposed to put a 1 in front. It's an invisible 1. That's factoring using the AC method. You start off by splitting the middle, then you have 4 terms, then you have to use the 4-term method. So Augie, I know it's messy. That's pretty much as neat as I can get it. Hopefully you have those steps written down, or I'll give you a second to write them down, because we're going to do that, I think, about 8 more times. Factor using the AC method. And this, for some reason, this AC method is the hardest for students. But it's time consuming. I think that's why everybody wants it done right away. And it takes, you got to do your 3 steps or 4 steps, 3 steps. And then step 4 is use the 4-term method. So you break out those steps and you got another 3 or 4 steps to do. All right, I'm gonna move on now. I'll give you another, I'm gonna give you another minute just in case somebody's typing something in. What happened to my, something's wrong. Oh, there it is. It was covering it up. All right, I'm gonna clear it. And we're gonna go to the next step. Okay, so I told you yesterday I was going to do this, and I'm going to do this for each problem I come across because it's good practice. Look for a GCF first. Is there any number that divides into 3, 8, and 35? Well, 3 is just 3, and 3 doesn't go into 8. No. Lowest power n is no n. So there's no GCF. So I'm looking to factor out a GCF first. There is no GCF. So then I'm going to go to the 3-term method when the number in front of x squared is 3, when the number does not equal 1. 3-term, and the number does not equal 1. The steps are step 1, multiply a, oh my, multiply a times c. 3 times 35 equals 105. So the all the pairs that multiply 105 is 1 times 105. The only numbers that divide into 5, I think, are 5. 5 times 21 is 105. Oh, I see another one. By the way, don't forget, on your calculator, do 105 divided by 2. It's a decimal. 105 divided by 3. Oh, I get 35. 3 times 35 is 105. 105 divided by 4. No, 105 divided by 5 is 21. By 6 is a decimal. Watch what happens when you do 105 divided by 7. I get 15. 7 times 15 is 105. And I think I got them all. 21 has 3 and 7. We have that. 35 has 7 and 5. We have that. 15 is 3 and 5. So it looks like we got them all.
Wait, I have a question before you move on.
Yes.
When you put when the number does not equal 1, do you mean the 3n squared when that does not equal 1 in front of the second term?
The number in front of the x square or the n square. Yes.
Okay.
So this number does not equal 1.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at the 3-term problems we did yesterday, they all equaled 1. Some of them didn't, but we factored out the GCF, then they equaled 1. This time, they don't equal 1, so we have to use the AC method that we're using, splitting the middle. Okay? Thanks for the question. Okay, so which one add or subtract to equal 8?
15 minus 7.
A positive 15, yes, and a negative 7. So I'm going to split the middle, and this over here is the 3rd term. I don't want my 3rd term to be negative, so I'm always going to put the, if there's a negative and a positive, I'm always going to put the negative first. Plus 15n. Do you see? We're using negative 7 and 15 to this negative 7 plus 15n equals 8n. They equal each other. We're not changing the problem. It's that we're changing its appearance, but not its value. Then we have a negative 35 at the end and a 3n squared in the front. I mean, as soon as you split the middle, now we have 4 terms. Factor using the 4-term method. And the 4-term method is put a parentheses around the first 2 terms. Put a parentheses around the second 2 terms. Make sure there's a plus sign between it. Factor out the GCF. Nothing, 3 and 7 doesn't factor, but an n does. Do you see the lowest power n? And n divides out. So we have n squared divided by n to the 1 is just n. The n's cancel. We're dividing just by n. The n's cancel, so I'm just left with a -7. Can somebody tell me what divides out of the second parentheses?
3.
Not 3.
5.
Yeah, 5. Do you see? We want to make it. We want to turn it into 3. And if you divide 15 by 5, then you get 3. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and then the n. 35 divided by 5, negative 35 divided by a positive 5 is a -7. Do you see how when you divide both by 5, you get 3n -7, and the parentheses are the same? So then 4 terms, I put a parentheses here, and I'm factoring out the 3n -7 in front. What's left over? N plus 5. And this is the final answer. By the way, if you FOIL this and combine like terms, you're going to end up right back where we began. Okay. We're going to do number 3 next. Try to do it a little neater. Number 3. Is there a GCF, a greatest common factor that I can factor out of here? 9, 6, both of them divide by 3, but 8 does not divide by 3. 8 divides by 2 and 4. 6 does not divide by 4. So, and there's no lowest power z. This one doesn't have it. So there is no GCF. I'm always going to look for a GCF. No GCF. So I'm going to continue. A times C. I'm going to use this method, the AC method, because the number in front of z squared does not equal 1. It equals something other than 1. And AC is 9 times 8, which equals 72. So 1 times 72, then I go 72 divided by 2 on my calculator, 2 times 36. 72 divided by 3 is 24. 72 divided by 4, I think it divides by 4, right? Yes, it does divide by 4. 4 times, what is it? 72 divided by 4. 18. 72 divided by 4, 5, no. By 6, yes. 6 times 12 is 72. And then there's one more. 9 times 8 is 72. Maybe I should have said 8 times 9, because 8 comes first. So these are all the pairs that multiply together to equal 72. Which one, when I add or subtract them, equals a -6? We want to know which one equals a -6.
-12 plus 6.
Yes. And I'm just checking to see if there's any more. No, that's it. So that's it. We have to split this middle to -12 and +6. However, I'm putting the +6 z here and the -12 z here. I always like my third term to be positive if I have a choice. So the third term is positive now. Do you see this third term is positive? So that's why I put the negative first when I split the middle. I'm going to use the 4-term method to factor now. Put a parentheses around the first two, the second two, make sure there's a plus sign between it. Factor out the GCF of each group. If you look at 9 and 12, 3 factors out and Z. 9 is 1 times 9, 3 times 3, and 12 is 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. The largest, there's no 9 over there, so the largest number in both is 3. So I'm going to divide out a 3, and the lowest power Z is Z. When I divide out a 3, 9 divided by 3 is 3. Then I have, oh wait, and I'm dividing by Z. I didn't see that. I'm dividing by Z. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Z squared divided by Z is just Z. Negative 12 divided by 3 is a negative 4. The Z's cancel here. I'm going to try to clean that up just a little bit. All right, here, 6 and 8, a 2 divides out of both of those. If I divide both by 2 and no Z, you see there's no Z by 8. 6 divided by 2 is 3Z. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. The parentheses are identical. So we're going to write a big parentheses here and factor out the parentheses in front. 3Z minus 4. Whatever's left over, 3Z and plus 2. This is our answer. So this is called the AC method, or factoring when the number in front of x squared does not equal 1, called the AC method. Sometimes they call it splitting the middle method, because you split the middle into 2 numbers and create 4 terms. Any questions so far? I'm going to continue, but I just want to make sure we're okay. It's a lot. I mean, each day, if you look, we're going to be covering some really new material. There's a lot of stuff you can't put into the calculator. So you really have to stay current in the class. If you skip a day or 2 or 3 and not do any homework, it gets really, really tough to catch up. All right, moving on. Don't forget, you have your test to take by tomorrow night. Please don't wait till late at night. Please. I'm looking for a GCF. There's no B in the last one, and 2 goes into 6, 3 goes into 6, but 7 is prime. Nothing goes into that other than 7. So there's no GCF. So I'm going to factor, I'm going to multiply A times C. 6 times 22, oh man, what is that? 132? Yeah. Okay, so 1 times 132. 2 times 66 is 132. Oh no, I need a calculator. 132 divided by 3. 3 times 44. 132 divided by 4. 4 times 33. Interesting, 66. 44, 33, all double numbers. 132 divided by 5, no. Divided by 6, look at this. 6 times 22. Next, 132 divided by 8. No, that's a decimal. What else could we? Oh, I see it. I see one. 132 by 8 by 9. No. 132 divided by 9. No. By 10. No. By 11. Yes. 132 divided by 11. 11 times 12. So we got right up to the next number 12. So I know I don't have to go because 12 is already there. So I know I don't have to go any further. So these are all the pairs that multiply to get 132. How do I get a plus 7 out of it? Is there a way of getting a plus 7? Anybody see a way of getting a plus 7? I don't see it.
Is it prime?
It's prime unless I missed one. Anybody you want to check the back of the book? Unless I miss a multiplication, that should be there. I don't think I missed any. 6 is there, 11, 2, 4, 8 is not there. I don't see any that equals. I think I got all the multiplications. So this is prime. By the way, somebody remind me, as soon as we're done here, we have to go back and do one of the problems from yesterday. Somebody mentioned something to me yesterday that we did the problem wrong. So I'm going to go back and do a problem from yesterday. Just one problem from yesterday. All right, so if you can't split this middle and do this, you're done. It's prime. If you can't find the 7 like it's there, I don't see it. We're done. 8, 7, 132 divided by 7 is not it either, right? 132 divided by 7.
Yeah, the back of the book says it's prime.
Okay, good, good. Thank you. I'm glad somebody checked. I didn't even know the answers were back there. So number 4 is prime. We can't factor it. Number 5. Okay, so number 5. I'm looking for a GCF first. So before I factor this, I'm going to look for a GCF. 4, 33. 33 is 3 times 11, and 4 doesn't go into 3 or 11. And R, there's no R. T, there's no T. So there's no GCF in this problem. So there's nothing I can factor out. However, look at this one. The R squared, the number in front is negative. So, and this is the first time we've had this. We don't want a negative here. We don't want a negative right there. We don't want that. So I am going to factor out a negative. Watch how I do it. I am going to factor out a negative. I'm just going to factor out a negative. In other words, I'm going to divide by -1. You know, a negative means there's a -1. I'll just put a -1 there if you want. I'm going to just factor out a -1. Watch what happens. -4 divided by -1 is a positive 4R squared. Positive 33 divided by -1 is a negative 33 RT. And -8 divided by -1 is a positive 8 T squared. could have left myself a little bit more. Okay, see, I factored out a negative. Now my R square is positive, and I'm going to use AC. I'm going to leave that negative on the side, that -1 on the side, and I'm going to add that at the end. So this is A and this is C. A is 4. C is, did I say AC and put it A there? AC and C is 8, which equals 32. 1 times 32, 2 times 16 is 32, 4 times 8 is 32, and that's it. How do I get a -33?
-32 minus 1.
Yes. This was 2 times. So a -1 and a -32 give me a -33. Now they're both negative, so it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to put the negative. I'm going to put the -32 first. -30. It doesn't matter which one goes first. -32 RT minus 1 RT. Sorry, my T's look really bad. I have to curly Q them. RT minus 1 RT. And then I'm going to bring the 8T squared down and the 4R squared down. I'm going to write this again over here just so I have a little bit of extra room. Minus 1 RT plus 8T squared. Okay, so I just took it over to there. Now we're going to factor using the 4-term method. Put a parentheses around the first 2. Put a parentheses around the second 2. Since the third term's negative, you have to put a parentheses around that. Put a plus sign between it. Then factor out the GCF out of each group. A 4 and 32, if you look at that, a 4 factors out. 1 times 4, and then 32 is 4 times 8, so 4 is the largest. A 4 factors out. Also, if you look, there's an R in each, so we're going to factor out an R. There's no T. There's no T in the first term, so we're factoring out 4R in each one of these. 4R. 4 divided by 4 is 1. R squared divided by R is R. So you can put 1R. I'm just going to leave it as R. -32 divided by 4 is a -8. The R's cancel, and then we have a T here. Can somebody tell me what we have to do when the third term is negative for factoring out a GCF? Do you remember what I said? When the third term is negative?
You have to divide by negative.
Yeah, you have to factor out a negative. Boy, I don't know if anybody else could hear you, but it sounds like you're lagging because your voice was jumbled like you're in a voice synthesizer.
It's because the power went out here at work.
Okay.
I'm on my phone now.
All right. So yes, we do have to factor out a negative, and it's a 1, so a 1 factors out, and they both have a T, so I'm factoring out a negative. Do you see how they both have a T? I'm factoring out a negative T in both of them. A negative T. -1 divided by -1 is a +1. The T's cancel, and we're left with R. +8 divided by a -1 is a -8, and then 1 T cancels out, and the parentheses are identical. Then we're going to put a parentheses here, factor out the parentheses, the R minus 8T, Whatever's left over, this 4R and this minus T is my answer. Now, there's only one more thing. If I type this into the computer, it's going to mark it wrong. Can somebody tell me why?
You need to bring down the negative.
Yes, this negative we factored out has to come down right there. And this looks like the correct answer now. Okay. So if the first term is negative, make sure you start off by factoring a -1 out as a GCF, then go through the AC method, 4 times 8. Don't use the negative when you're factoring that out. All right, problem 6 is next. Stop me if anybody has any questions. I'm not going to do 6. By the way, does somebody have the answer key? And I can post the answer here. So if anybody wants to work it, make sure they can get it. Anybody? What's the answer for number 6? Sorry for forcing you to look it up. Or you can look it up in the back.
It's parenthesis 4x plus 5 and parenthesis x minus 7.
Okay, so I'm just putting the answer here so you can factor this out and see if you get that. I'm going to go to number 7 next. So that's the answer. I'm not going to do it. Okay, so number 7, finally, all our work is paid off. Step 1, always look for a GCF. Look at all these numbers here. 12 is 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. 40 is 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, 5 times 8. 32 is 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 4 times 8. It looks is 12 is not a larger number in all of them. 6 is not in all of them. It looks like 4 is the GCF, and there's no N here. So we're going to factor out a 4. GCF equals 4. And we get 3n squared minus 10n plus 8. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Ooh, who's writing on my tablet? You wanted to see if it worked? All right. Next, we're going to leave this 4 here. We're only going to do the AC method for these 3 terms here. AC. So AC method, 3 times 8 is 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12 is 24. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 6 is 24. How do I get a -10? Ooh. Ooh.
-6 minus 4.
-6 and -4. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What about a -12 and a +2? Doesn't that equal -10 also?
Yes.
Yes, it does. However, I think this is the answer. Can somebody tell me why you think that's the answer? I think this is the answer because when you multiply AC 3 times 8, they're both positive, and you get 24. When you multiply these two, a -4 times a -6, you get 24. So I'm gonna say -4, -6 is the answer. -4n, -6n. Then I'm gonna bring the 8 down and the 3n squared. Somebody's microphone on and we can hear you, TV. Thank you. Or I can hear the TV. I don't know about anybody else. Okay, so I'm using this one because -4 times -6 is a positive 24, and AC 3 times a positive 8 is a positive 24. Let's see if that works. So now we're going to factor using the 4-term method. Group the first two, group the second two, make sure there's a plus sign between it. Can somebody tell me the GCF for the first parentheses?
N.
Just n, because 3 and 4, the only thing they have in common is 1, and the lowest power n is n, so I'm going to divide both by n, and I get 3n to the 1 power. Those cancel, and I get -4. All right. The third term is negative, so I'm going to factor out a negative. Automatically, when the third term is negative, I know I'm going to factor out a negative, and I have a 6 and an 8, so they both divide by 2. So I'm going to divide both of these by -2. -6 divided by -2 is a positive 3n. A positive 8 divided by -2 is a -4, and our parentheses are identical. Since it worked, I know that's not the answer. By the way, if you couldn't get it to work, then try the other pair. But normally, if you look at 3 times 8 and they're both positive, then when you multiply these two, they should both be positive. When you multiply them, they should be positive also. And -4 times -6 is positive. So then we factor out the parentheses, 3n minus 4. What's left is n minus 2. So my answer is 3n minus 4, n minus 2. But don't forget, we have this that we did at the very beginning. We factored out a GCF of 4. That's our reminder. So a 4 has to come in front of it. Okay. There's a lot to learn. Please practice these. You might have to practice them a long time and over again. Just factoring is really important because we do a lot of stuff in algebra with factoring, a ton of stuff. And I'm not talking now, I'm talking in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. We're going to be using factoring a lot. Number 8. Factor out a GCF. If you look at each term, they're all divide by 2. And if I divide each one by 2, I get 5. Is that a G or a Q? I guess it's a Q. It's a Q. 5Q plus 5Q squared, sorry, plus 7Q minus 6. So don't forget, our GCF equals 2. That's going to be in our answer at the end. So we are going to factor this using the AC method because the number in front of Q squared is 5. And AC, A is 5, C is 6. 5 times 6 is 30, so I have 1 times 30. 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. Which one gives me a positive 7? Oops, look at that. Me, I'm just messing everything up. A positive 7, a plus 10, and a minus 3. That gives me a, thank you. Somebody typed it in for me. Thank you, Matilda. A minus 3 and a plus 10. So we're going to split the middle. And I always do the negative first, minus 3q and a plus 10q. So do you see how I split them so it equals 7q? So I'm adding the q to those. Minus 3q plus 10q is a positive 7q. Then I bring the 6 down, minus 6. And I bring, oh, I don't need a parentheses there yet. And I bring the 5q squared down. Okay, we have 4 terms. I'm going to group the first 2. Group the second 2. Make sure there's a plus sign between it. I'm going to factor the GCF. 5 and 3 have nothing that divide into it. Only a Q comes out since I have a Q2 and Q1. So if I divide each by Q, I am left with 5Q minus 3 because those Q's cancel and this one just takes 1. Here, 10 and 6 are 2 factors out. That's it. And 10 divided by 2 is 5Q. 6 divided by 2 is 3, a negative 3. Negative 6 divided by a positive 2 is a negative 3. Factor out the 5Q. 3, 5Q minus 3. That factors out. What's left is Q plus 2. And don't forget, our GCF has to come down into the final answer. So you see, I mean, we just did what, 7 or 8 of these. One of them we didn't do. So we did 7 of these, and it's the same process each time. If you, before you do the homework, if you want to go back to the video and a piece of paper, write out the problem, try to factor it, and then hit play and watch me do it and see if you get the same thing. That would be a great study tool where you open up your workbook. Okay, there's a first one. I'm going to do a blank sheet of paper. I'm going to write the problem in, try to work it out. Then I hit play and watch the instructor do it. I think that, I mean, if you have the time, like anything, learning, it takes time. No matter what you're going to learn, it's going to take time. Oh, so is this the last one? I'm not going to do this one then. Watch the, oh no, there's a 9, there's a 10. So I'm going to do problem 10. I'm not going to do 9. You can look in the back of the book for this answer. I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to go to number 10. Okay, so number 10 is our last 3 term. Look for a GCF first, 8, 22, and 5. 5 is only 1 and 5. 5 doesn't go into 22 and 5 doesn't go into 8. So there is no GCF. Lowest power X, this has no X. Lowest power Y, this has no Y. So there's no GCF. We're just going to factor using the AC method. 8 times 5 is 40. So I have 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, and 5 times 8. Which one equals 22? That's pretty easy. A plus 2 and a plus 20. I split the middle with a plus 2xy and a plus 20xy. Do you see we have xy, so I have to split. I'm breaking 22 up into two pieces, 2xy and 20xy. Then I have a plus 5y squared here and an 8x squared here. Now I can factor this using the 4-term method. Parentheses around the first two, parentheses around the second two, find the GCF out of each one. Can somebody tell me what the GCF is out of the first parentheses? What is the GCF out of the first parentheses?
2x.
Yeah, it's 2x. Do you see 8 and 2 both divide by 2? Lowest power x is x. Lowest power y, there's no y, so we can't take a y out. So I divide both by 2x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X squared divided by x. 2 minus 1 is just x to the 1 power. The 2's cancel, the x's cancel, and all we're left with is the y. On the next one, a 20 and 5 factors out. They both have a y in it, so 5y factors out. 20 divided by 5 is 4. The y's cancel, and I'm left with an x. Here, 5's cancel. One of the y's cancel, so I'm left with 1y. The parentheses are the same, so I factor out the parentheses. Whatever's left over, 2x plus 5y, go into the other parentheses. And that is factoring using the AC method. It's tedious. I mean, you have to look at those steps, okay? And I mean, if you go back and look at those steps 3 days from now, you may not understand them. That's why I said try to do these as soon as you can to get a little practice, and then when you have time to do them all, do that. It's really important to get the practice in as soon as you can. All right, number 11. You're going to like number 11, I think. You're going to like the rest of these. I hope you like the rest of these. How many terms do I have? Anybody? How many terms are on number 11?
2.
There are 2 terms. So this is factoring 2 terms. The method for factoring 2 terms. And it's a really easy method. Step number 1, make it look like this. Something squared minus something squared. And I want to emphasize there must be a negative here, a subtraction. I'm going to call it a subtraction, not a negative. A subtraction sign here. Must be subtraction. If you don't see a subtraction, if there's a plus there, you can't factor it. It's prime. 2 terms with a plus in between it is prime. So, step 1, make it look like this. Can somebody tell me what I put in that parentheses to square it to equal 9? What goes into parentheses to equal 9? Something squared.
3.
Yeah, 3 squared is 9. Do you see? We want to put whatever in there. Okay, what goes into parentheses so we get t squared? T. Do you see? Now I have t squared minus 9. Step 1, make it look like this, a square. Something squared minus something squared. And I'm going to call this, by the way, I'm going to call this A, and I'm going to call this B. Step number 2. By the way, there's only 2 steps to this factoring. Write down 2 parentheses. The A's go into the first spot. The B's go into the second spot of each parentheses. One has to be a plus and one has to be a minus. That's it. In other words, I'm going to write down 2 parentheses for step 2. A T goes into the first spots of each. A 3 goes into the second spot for each. 1 plus, 1 minus, we are done. That's factoring 2 terms. Everybody going, what? All this other, why didn't we do this first? Normally I factor 2 terms first, but they wanted me to do it in this format. Yeah, I guess this is kind of relief. Let's check our work. I'm going to check my work really quick. T plus 3 times T minus 3. And if I just, T times T is T squared. T times a negative 3 is a negative 3T. 3 times T is a positive 3T. And 3 times a negative 3 is a negative 9. These cancel. 3 minus 3 is 0. And I'm left with T squared minus 9. Remember, we talked about when we FOILed, when we distributed these 2 terms, when they're exactly the same, one's plus, one minus, the middle terms always cancel. That's how we get the 2 terms. So if you remember, we distributed, we ended up with 2 terms because the middle terms cancel. Because both parentheses are the same, one is a plus and one is a minus at the end of it. So remember these steps. We're going to do them about 6 or 7 more times. All righty, moving on. Number 9. Step 1, make it look like this. And I'm going to change my color. What goes inside the first parentheses? What squared equals 9?
3.
3. And something squared equals x squared, x. Do you see? Remember, power outside the parentheses is attached to the 3, and it attaches to the x. So I'm putting 3x in the parentheses. What am I putting in the other parentheses?
4.
Yes, 4. By the way, let me show you on your calculator, you can hit the square. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do it next. But you can hit the square root of 4 on your calculator. Square root of 4, square root of 16, and it tells you what goes in there, you know. And square root of 16 is 4. So that's step 1. Step 2, write 2 parentheses. Whatever's in the first parentheses, 3x, goes into the first spot. Whatever's in the second parentheses, 4 and 4, 1 plus, 1 minus. It doesn't matter if the first one's a plus and the second one's a minus, or vice versa, minus plus. It doesn't matter. That's it. That's factoring two terms. That's it. So let me just show you on the calculator again, just because I don't think we've done square roots yet. My camera's not even set up right. What happened? Oh, there we go. Square root is, where is it? It's right above the X square button in green. So if I hit square root of 16, I get 4. If I got the square root of 225, that's the square root. 225, it equals 15. If I get the square root of 20, let's say 20 was in there, square root of 20, if it gives me a decimal, then you can't use this method. then it's probably prime. If you had x squared minus 20, 20 isn't a perfect square, so then the answer would be prime. And I'm sure we're going to come up with something like that. We'll see. So number 13. Ooh, I like it. Number 13. Something, it's two terms. We have two terms here. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Something squared minus something squared. This is always step one. I can do 16 real quick since we've done it so many times. It's 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 squared is 16. Here, put the square root of 25 in your calculator, you get 5. And then I have p squared, so we're only going to put 1 p in there because the square comes down to it. And then 1 q in there. That's what's in the parentheses. Because squared is 25, p squared, q squared. Remember, power outside of a parentheses attaches to each item when I put it inside. Step 2, write 2 big parentheses. Whatever's in the first parentheses, 5pq, 5pq goes in the first spots. Whatever's in the second parentheses, 4 and 4 goes in the second spot. 1 plus, 1 minus, we are done. That's it. How many people like factoring two terms? Yay. Okay, do number 14 on your own. See if I get the same thing as you do. So what you're saying is I should put about 10 of these on the test? Let's just take a 2-term test. All right, try number 14 on your own, and let's see if I get the same thing you do. Dun, 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 dun. Alma has an answer. Looks good. All right, so 49, if you're not sure about 49, put the square root of 49 in your calculator. 49 is 7 times 7. So it's 7 squared, and there's an x. So 7x times 7x is 49x squared. Then we have 4y. Square root of 4 is 2, and then we have a y. So you should have 7x and 2y in the parentheses. Right, 2 big parentheses. 7x, 7x in the first spots, 2y, 2y in the second spots, 1 plus, 1 minus, and we're done. God, I love two terms. All right, number 15. So I just want to remind everybody that these problems won't say factor using the two-term method or factor using this method. They'll just say factor. And then you do all the factoring you can. So don't forget, I forgot in the last few problems, but don't forget, the first thing you always do is look for a GCF. And this one helps. Do you see the square root of 2 on your calculator is a decimal, so I can't do this. However, look at the GCF. The GCF equals 2. 2 divides into both of these. So if I divide them both by 2, then I'm left with 1b squared plus 100. Now try to factor this using the two-term method. Go ahead. Nobody say anything. Just type in your answer when you're done for number 15. Factor it using the two-term method. B squared plus 10, plus 100. And a hint, 100 is 10 times 10. And I know somebody's looking in the back of the book. Don't look in the back of the book. I might have just reminded people to go look in the back of the book. Do not look in the back of the book. I can see you. Don't look in the back of the book. What's your answer? Anybody, type it in. Don't look in the back of the book. Anybody have an answer? Is this microphone on? Did we just have a zombie apocalypse? Where's everybody at? Is there a sign for zombie? Oh, you have to spell it out?
I don't know a sign if we have one.
Just checking. Matilda, I was oh, 25 is wrong, but by the way. If you put the square root of 100 in your calculator, you get 10. But look. Remember step 1. Go back and read the notes. I erased them. Step 1, you must have a subtraction sign between it. So this cannot factor anymore. The only way you can factor two terms is when there is a subtraction sign between the two terms. I mean, this is something squared, something squared. We have 10 and we have b. But you can only do this with a subtraction. And this problem has a plus. So if it was just this problem, I would call it prime. However, it says factor completely. So the answer, we just factored a 2 out. So this is the answer. That's it, because you cannot factor anymore because of a plus sign. I just want to make sure you understand. What did you type in, Matilda? I can't make heads or tails out of that. That's the symbol for woman. I don't know what those other boxes are. Do you have some kind of a keyboard that oh, is that what it is? See, I'm not very good at that emoji stuff or whatever it is. So this number 15, this is the answer, 2 parentheses b squared plus 100. You cannot factor two terms if there is a plus sign between it. You cannot factor two terms. So I hope you have that written down when I wrote the steps. There must be a negative between it in order for you to factor. Something square minus something square. Number 16. If you look at number 16, a 5 factors out. GCF. So that's the, I'm always looking for a GCF first. And it's 5. A 5 factors out. If I divide both by 5, I get n squared, 1n squared minus 16. 80 divided by 5 is 16. And yes, there's a minus between it. So I put an n here and I put a 4 here. 4 squared is 16. So this factors out to n 4, 4, 1 plus 1 minus. Don't forget, this 5 is part of our answer. All right, try number 17. Step 1, look for a GCF first. And I'm going to give you a hint. I think the GCF is only 2. The GCF is 2. So let's see if you can get it. Number 17. Let's see how you guys do. So you might have to put 25, square root of 25 in your calculator and the square root of 144, unless you know it. So 25 is 5 times 5, and then k squared is k. 144, square root of 144 is 12. So we're going to put 2 big parentheses, 5k in the first one, 12 in the second spot, 1 plus, 1 minus. Don't forget our GCF, 2 in front. And we get that. Thank you, Amanda. Oh, did you see how I got it wrong, but Amanda got it right? Look at the m squared. I didn't see that. So there should be a m squared here, so there should be a m here, so it should be 12m and 12m. I overlooked the m squared. See, I would have been typing that into the homework all day long, getting it wrong. I said, I'm right. I just didn't see the m squared. Thank you, Matilda. Last problem, last but not least. This is the hardest one, but it's not hard, I promise you. It's kind of interesting, to tell you the truth. Step 1, make it look like this. 81, square root of 81 is 9. But we have an x4 this time. So I have to put square here because x squared raised to the second power. Remember, power raised to a power, you multiply. So when you have a 4, you have to put an x square inside. 16 is, square root of 16 is 4. Then I have to put a y square in there. Write 2 big parentheses. 9x squared in the first spot for each, and 4y squared in the second spot for each. 1 plus, 1 minus. Now, if you type this into your computer, it's wrong. That is the wrong answer. Can anybody tell me why? This is the trickiest one, and there's always one of these on the test. There is always one of these on the test. And that's why a lot of times the problems say factor completely. Okay, this is correct, but look at this. I want you to stay focused on this. Do you see how I have 2 terms again? And 9 is a perfect square. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I can now factor this red little box again. I can factor this again using the 2-term method. Something squared minus something squared. Here I put 3x. Here I put 2y. Square root of 4 is 2 and then a y. Square root of 9 is 3, then an x. Then I put 2 big parentheses and I put 3x in the first spot, 2y in the second spot, 1 plus, 1 minus, and that is factored. We started with, here, and we factored it again. Can somebody tell me why I cannot do this one? Why am I not allowed to do this one right here? I did the one with the red box. Why can't I do the other one?
It has a plus sign.
Yeah, it has a plus sign, so I can't do that one. It's 2 terms and it has a plus sign, so we just bring that down. It's still part of the answer. And this is the entire answer. We just had to we had to check to see if that two terms can be factored again. So you only check that when you're dealing with an x4 or y4, you know, when something to the fourth power. Then you have to check to see if you can do it again in one of your pair. And it's always going to be the two terms with the minus between it. You can't do it with the plus between it. So we're not done. I got to go back and do one more problem. I'm going to give you a second to write this down, but we have to go back to yesterday and do one more problem.
Are we going to do number 19 or no?
Oh, is there a 19? I thought there were only 18. It's the same thing. Look in the back of the book. It's the same thing as that. 625 is 25 times 25. And then 25, square root of 25 is 5 times 5. So look in the back of the book. It's the same as 18. You factor it once, then you factor the negative, the one with the minus between it again. So you know we're not going to do number 19. It's done exactly the same way as 18, though. You're going to factor it once. So I'm going back to what we did yesterday. I can't remember who told me it. They told me I did it wrong. Shanice, was it you? Which problem was it? Do you remember? I think it was you, Shanice. Or maybe it wasn't.
You didn't do it wrong. It was number 19. We just didn't do it, but
yeah, we didn't do it at all?
Yeah, you had skipped that one, but
okay.
There was no GCF and you helped me with it.
Okay, so let's do this one now, because this is really important. There might be one of these on the homework. I don't know if there's one like this on the test. But factoring four terms, step one, put a parentheses around the first two terms, put a parentheses around the second two terms, make sure there's a plus sign between it. So I'm putting a star. I guess I skipped it. Factor out the GCF. 20 and 9. There is no GCF. So my first response would be, it's prime. But if you type that into in the homework, or you look in the back of the book, that's not correct. What you have, remember, I had mentioned this. I know not many people were really listening closely, but I had mentioned that if you end up with where you can't factor out a GCF, try to rearrange the terms. So I'm just going to switch two terms and see what happens. 20x squared minus 15xy minus 9y plus 12x. So I just switch two terms and see if I can find a GCF now. Parentheses around the first two terms, second two terms, make sure there's a plus sign between it. A 5x divides out of this. 20 and 15 is 5, and there's an x in both. So if I divide both by 5x, 20 divided by 5 is 4, x squared divided by x is 1x. 15 divided by 5 is 3, the x's cancel, and I get a y. The third term is negative, so I know I'm going to factor out a negative. And a 3 divides into 9 and 12, so I'm factoring out a negative 3. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 is a positive 3. 12 divided by a negative 3 is a negative 4x. Oh, this is kind of cool. Do you see how the signs are different? A 4x and a minus 4x, they're not identical. So I'm going to mess with this again. They're close. I'm going to mess with this again. That's why I said I don't think I'll have one of these on the test. I don't think so. I'll check it ahead of time. There might be. Since the signs were opposite, and I'm not factoring out a negative, I'm just going to factor out a 3. Watch what happens. So what happens if I factor out a positive 3? Negative 9 divided by a positive 3 is a negative 3y. 12 divided by 3 is a positive 4x. Now they're the same, even though the 4x is at the back. When you add 6 plus 2, it's the same thing as 2 plus 6. Do you see? You can add them in any order. So I'm just going to switch these two spots, 4x minus 3y. You can change their position. It's the same number. And now I can factor this. Now the parentheses are identical. And we factor out the parentheses, which is 4x minus 3y. And what's left over is the 5x plus 3. So if at first you can't find the GCF for 4 terms, try to rearrange the number of the terms and see if you can find one then. And you see I had to rearrange it again, and then I was able to find it. So just be careful. And then after, if you rearrange and rearrange and rearrange and nothing works, then it's prime. But here we got to an answer. All right, that's all I had today. I will once again hang around if there's any questions. Don't forget, 6 of you have not, I need to take rolls. I think there's, give me 1 second. 6 of you have not taken test 1. So I'm concerned. Make sure you take it. Please don't wait till Friday night. You're going to email me and says, oh, I wasn't able to take it because my computer went out or I lost power. Let's see. Where's my attendance? It's coming. Give me a second. Shanice is here. And Amanda, you're here, right? Amanda?
Yes.
Yes. That's it. All right. Any questions?
No, sir.
I'll see you on Monday. Make sure you 6 people who haven't taken it take test number 1. By the way, if you do bad on test 1, you can do that extra homework assignment and retake test 1 time, 1 additional time to try to bring up your grade. Call me or email me if you have any questions. You guys have a good weekend, but study, do your homework, and I will see you on Monday. Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, I got to hear Jose. Matilda, you okay? Oh, yeah, you got a question? Are you watching TV? All right. I'm gonna hit, bye-bye, YouTube.